I move that we come out of executive session and start the regular meeting. It is February 20th, 2025.
I'll
and-
second.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Council members?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start as we always do with saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you'll stand for one more minute, I don't know if you all know, but we lost one of our board members, Paul Winters, sort of tragically, and very surprisingly this week. I wanted to have just a moment of silence if everyone will do that. Okay, thank you. I'm going to mess around with the schedule a little bit here. I thought the board members would just like to say something about Paul before we move on. I guess, do you want to start, Rosanna? Or not? Do you want,
Well,
are you okay starting, or do you want me
no,
to
it's
start?
fine.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say, Paul and I didn't always agree on everything, but the one good thing about Paul is, and this is his words, at the end of the day, we could walk out of here and still be friends. And I think that was one of the things that I really admired about Paul, the fact that he can leave things in the boardroom. And, he was a very family-oriented and community-oriented guy. He was very proud of his family. He would talk about them all the time. And obviously, he was very concerned about the community, which is evident through his work with the Rec Commission and other things, and his work on the town board. So we're going to miss him, for sure. He had a lot of energy and a lot of force.
Go ahead.
The guy used to dress up as the Grinch, which, I mean, he was just, there's so many things I could say, and it could take a while, but his spirit is with me right now, and when you lose someone that you care about, that's what remains. And for me, and I know I've talked to some of the board members about this, about his drive and his spirit and perseverance and what he wanted to do for his town. And that's going to remain. And I hope I can do a good enough job on that in honor of Paul. Thanks.
And I just wanted to say that Paul is kind of irreplaceable because he was a large personality, and he cared enormously about the town and about the rec program and about making the town better. And he and I disagreed about a lot of stuff. But again, I felt like we were friends when we left the room. And so anyway, you will be missed, Paul. Okay. So, I'm sorry, the emergency exits, in case any of you have forgotten since the last time you were all here. The first one is the door you came in. The second one is this other door to the corridor. And do you want to do the roll call, Dawn? Did I forget something?
No.
Oh, okay.
Supervisor Blackman?
Yes, here.
Here.
Here?
Was that everyone? Yes. Okay, so I think then that we will do public comment, and then we will get the presentation from Delaware Engineering. So, are there public comments?
Yeah, I have to make a comment about Paul. Everyone used the same word, caring. Everyone used the same word, forceful. Paul drove me crazy sometimes, but there wasn't a mean bone in his body. He did what he thought was best for this town. He cared tremendously. And it's kind of funny to honor him with a moment of silence because that's the last thing that it ever was when Paul was around, and he will be missed.
Thank you, Judy. Anyone else? Yes.
Just want to know the procedure for filling the remaining
You're going to have to go to the microphone because you know that, because otherwise people at home can't hear you and they want to. Can. I know.
Very simply, I'd like to know, obviously, Paul is missed. You don't have to know someone long to know them well. And the time I spent with Paul recently outside of this building, having dinner or whatnot, I didn't know him very long, but from that I got to know him very well. And he will be missed. I'd like to know what the procedures are according to the town codes and whatnot as to succession and what kind of time frame you're all looking at.
Okay. The process, the succession process, is the same as we had in the beginning of the year, where Nicole was appointed by the other 4 members. So not right at this moment because we need a little time to recover, but we will start talking as a board about whether there's a candidate that we have in mind and can all agree on, and then that will move ahead. I would imagine we'll make a decision as to whether we can find or not find another candidate within the month, I would think. Okay, anyone else? Then take it away, Delaware Engineering, and thank you for coming again.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Tracy Letter with Delaware Engineering. I'm a senior scientist, and this is Kelsey.
I am Kelsey Butera. I'm also with Delaware Engineering and I'm an engineer.
Okay, so we're going to be talking tonight about the MAP Plan and Report, which is a process that comes out of your project for water upgrades. And we're going to start with Kelsey on the first 2 slides and just setting the stage for us.
So first, an overview of your water system. You have a couple key components. You have your 4 wells, which are located in 2 separate well fields. You have 2 pump houses, 1 in each well field. You have your 200,000 gallon storage tank. And you have your water distribution system, which includes your water mains. So you have about 15 miles of water mains. They distribute about, on average, 60,000 gallons of water per day to about 300 users. And we're here today because your system is currently experiencing deterioration due to age, which is totally normal. It's what happens over time, and also some water quality concerns. We reviewed your system and came up with a list of proposed improvements, and the total cost of the project is about $3.9 million, and the focus of this presentation is the financial aspect of the proposed improvements. So the improvements fall into 4 main categories. So first we have the Lavelle Road pump house. This pump house is deteriorating, there's corrosion, there's all sorts of water damage, and our proposed plan would be to replace it with a prepackaged pump house and also add a filtration system for the 2 wells there. And this would cost about $830,000. The next section of upgrades would be for the 2 well fields. So for the wells at Lavelle Road, we would replace the aging pumps, raise the well casings to prevent against contamination. And then at Washington Court, we would also replace the aging well pumps. And then your well number 5 at Washington Court is currently out of service due to water quality concerns. So we would resolve that, requalify it so you can use it again. And those combined would be about $230,000. The next category for upgrades would be the storage tank. We're going to leave the existing one in place and rehabilitate it. Replace the inside and outside coatings. Replace the ladder so that it's OSHA safe. That would be 1.73 million. And then the last category is just improvements along the distribution system. So we would replace broken valves and hydrants, replace some undersized water mains, and cut and cap connections to abandoned water mains to prevent against contamination.
Okay, and as Kelsey has said, the recommendation comes to about 3.9 million. The question is, how does this get paid for? The MAP plan and report is being done under Town Law Article 202B, which covers upgrades and improvements to water districts. So just to start, a water district is an actual governmental unit, and it's governed, administered, it provides a service. So there's procedures that need to be followed to make such an improvement as is being recommended here. First off, you have to recognize that you've got some issues that need to be taken care of, and it's, as Kelsey said, it's not unusual. Systems age, everything's under the ground, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's often difficult to keep that in mind as you plan for things when other things are up close and more in view. So the town board planned for some of these required maintenance and contracted for an engineering report, which we called the preliminary engineering report, which was discussed here at the town board to describe the procedures and the processes and the things that need to be upgraded and fixed and replaced, and I think there's some discussion on that. The MAP plan and report is the next piece there. It defines what the project is, what's the project cost, how is it going to be financed or paid for or grant funds applied for, and what rate structure are we proposing, and how does that impact the people that are within the water district? Who are the people benefited by that water service, and how does this project affect them economically? During this process, a public hearing will be held, and people have the opportunity to comment, and the town board after that will decide if this project is in the interest of the public in upgrading this water system. So here we are, definition of the MAP plan and report, and this is a summary of the actual document that I believe is going to be posted. Two different rate structures that we're looking at is for O&M, which is operation and maintenance. Currently, your water charge is paid by a minimum fee and then a cost per gallon over that minimum water use. And then a tax levy is usually taken into account for any revenue that doesn't meet the required budget. So at the end of the year, it's levied on the taxes. What we're proposing in the new water structure is a facility fee, similar concept to a minimum fee, but it's tied to specific parts of the budget. Those things that are considered fixed costs, that the costs that don't change no matter how much water is used. So a lot of that is administration and personnel costs. You have to have people on staff, whether there's 6 people using water today and only 5 tomorrow, or how much water is produced on a daily basis. So the facility fee is going to be charged based on benefit points according to your existing point system, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. The new rate structure is for debt service. This is assuming several different financing options because there are some funding sources that have been identified already for this water system upgrade, and some that are potential that need an application. Currently, there is no debt, so the new structure for debt service is going to operate similarly on benefit. I guess I should explain benefit. We talk about who's benefited, who gets water supply, who's in the district. So you might not be connected right now, but because your property is right next to the water line and you have the option to connect, if you sell that property, that's a value added to your property because of the ability to connect to water. So that's considered a benefited property. So for debt, and benefit assignment, we consider the single-family home your base rate for benefit. You live in your house, you take a shower, you cook, you clean, you do those things for which you need water. You don't make a profit on that, you use it for living. Different commercial entities will have different benefits for having water based on what their business is. Are you cooking and making things and other things that require the use of water? You're benefiting more from the use of that water because you're making a profit, and you couldn't do that if you didn't have water. So a benefit point system is going to be set for each customer based on the property type, and then that'll be used to distribute any annual finance payment costs that come up on an annual basis. So here's an explanation of the benefit for operation and maintenance costs. So again, you take that portion of your budget, that's fixed fees, and that becomes your minimum fee. Well, a facility fee. It's not the same as a minimum fee, but it's a similar idea. So you have a total number of points. Your single-family homes are 1 point, 2, 3, or multiple residences are 2 points, and commercial or municipal buildings are 3 points. Each parcel gets assigned a point. How many of those total points add up to, right here it looks like 462. You take that portion of your budget, say it's X dollars, divided by 462 points, and you come up with a cost per point. So if you're a single family home, you get that single cost per point. If you're a multiple family home, you get 2 points on your billing. And then the water use rate is calculated from the remaining costs, those costs that aren't considered fixed costs. Same thing, you divide how many gallons you've made in a typical year, and divide that budget piece that's not fixed cost by those gallons, and you come up with a cost per, in this case, 1,000 gallons. So it's based more on your budget. It makes it easier to change your rates on a periodic basis if you need to. For debt service costs, this is only a partial table. The table is more extensive than this. It just didn't quite fit on the slide so that you could read it at all. Excuse me. Again, the single family homes is the base benefit rate. They're going to have 1 point per dwelling unit. As you get to multiple family homes, there's 1 point for each dwelling. Apartments, same, 1 for each dwelling unit. Vacant residential parcels are going to be charged 1/2 of a point per parcel. Commercials are divided in this table by their real property system parcel codes. Those are general codes, but they're useful in this instance. Do you use a lot of water for cooking or a car wash, or whatever you're doing? The benefit is based on as much as it can be on that usage. In some cases, it's really hard to say because the business or the building or the actual facility can be of different size. So it's divided down by 1,000 square feet. You get your pointage that way. It's not the same. A debt service benefit point is not the same as water usage. It's more based on how integral the use of water is in your business. So your cost per point is calculated by dividing that annual debt service cost, and that really depends on how much you need to finance, how much grant funding you can get. That will change. But your annual debt payment is divided by the total number of points, and that comes up to your cost per point. So when we do this sort of a change on a rate structure, we try to look back at what are you paying now, and what would your payment be for under this new rate structure. So this slide has got 2 separate pieces on it. We use the average water use per gallon for a single family home. Again, your single family home is your base benefit point. Looking at your records, we got 6,989 gallons per quarter was the average. So looking at your current charges is the next columns on, to the right of the first one, the grayish. The current base rate or your minimum fee is $75. The current cost of the use of the average amount of water is $34.95, and at the end of the year for the last year, that base tax levy would have been $37. So your total cost for water would be $146.96 for that quarter as an average water use single-family home. Putting the same numbers the farther right there, for the new quarterly fee for the facility fee, dividing your budget fixed costs by the number of points, you get $50.83 for your quarterly facility fee, and that cost for average use would be $63.41. Over here on the far right, you've got this example and where those numbers come from. Water use, using that same math we discussed earlier about your budget, non-fixed fees, non-fixed costs in your budget divided by how many gallons you're totally providing to your service. You divide that and you get $9.07 per 1,000 gallons. So that's what that average water cost is in that table. So looking at this, the old system, the average user of single-family home would be $146.96 per quarter, and under the new rate system, it's $114.24. So you have to kind of consider why is that. Basically, it's because the minimum fee was not addressing average water use or anything. It was close enough, but with no minimum fee, and it's not based on your water use, you're tied directly to water use. So your average person is going to be paying across this way. If you're using less water than that, your costs are going to go down. And if you're using more water than that, your costs are going to go up, because it's more directly tied to water use. And I think that's the goal, really. You want to make sure if you're using more water, you're paying more. So for the project, financing scenarios, we spread them out across 4 different scenarios based on how much grant funding, how much financing is required. So for scenario 1, that's simply the available American Rescue Plan Act funding. That would be what is that, Charlie? 400,000?
No, it's
68,000, okay. So the amount left after that ARPA money for the total project is that underneath scenario 1, the $3,234,622. Assuming an interest rate of $5, that'd be great, right? 5% and a term of 30 years, your annual payment would be $248,126. Dividing that by the total number of debt points, you get $330.39 would be charged to every 1 point for the year for debt service. If you go across the table, we're looking at scenarios with more funding, for funding applications to different agencies and different sources, how much we could potentially lower that cost of the total project to be financed. So if you walk across the bottom there at the charge per point, the more funding you apply for and receive, that cost could go down to $45.14 per year to be charged for debt service for each point that each parcel is assigned for debt service. So basically, this is a decent-sized project. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. If you make the efforts and apply for funding and can get some funding, what you're doing is reducing that cost to the regular customer. I think that's all we got there. So what needs to be looked at then is the customer impact to the single-family home. Again, that's the base benefit, is a single-family home. So this slide is looking at the scenarios, the same scenarios in funding in the previous slide. So the facility fee across the board for everybody is going to be the same thing. It's simply the fixed costs divided by the total number of operation and maintenance points. So everybody pays that facility fee. This water usage is again based on the average water use of a single-family home customer. That's not going to change. Then the debt service goes down depending on which funding scenario you actually wind up with. You can reduce that quite a bit, so that your total annual cost, if on the top right there, if there is no other funding than ARPA, it could be a total annual cost of $787 a year for the single family home. Currently, without any debt service, and looking at that previous slide, it's about $150 per quarter for the average water user under your current situation. So that's about $600 a year, give or take, for your average user. So comparing that to this slide here, if you only get the ARPA financing under the new rate structures, the average single family home would be paying $787 a year. So that would go up by $100, $200. If you go down the table, you're looking at the scenarios that involve more grant funding, and you could actually be getting that average user cost down quite a bit. Again, that's
What was the most optimistic of those?
the bottom one there
Yeah.
is $502.10 for both water usage and debt service for the average water user. Of course, that's going to be variable depending on what your budget is every year and how much water any particular customer uses. That would be what generates their bill. The average, though, is the average water use and the different financing scenarios.
Okay.
So steps to be taken in this process. Again, this is required under 202B. This is a water district is a governmental entity within the town. Any improvements need to be commented upon. People need their input. So the map plan and report is basically laying out the same information from the preliminary engineering report. This is what needs to be fixed and why, and this is the estimate of the total cost. So the draft of the actual document, the MPR, did go to the town board for review, and we're presenting that here tonight. Next, the town board will, I believe you already did adopt seeker as a negative declaration for state environmental quality review. The town board will set a public hearing. People will have a chance to make any comments. The town will listen to comments. And then if it is so determined after that public hearing that this project is in the public interest, the town board will adopt the MPR, adopt a bond resolution, and go about grant applications. May or may not be necessary to update the local water code. Haven't looked at that in detail yet. It was last updated in 2019. It looks to be pretty up to date. It's also a statement in there that from time to time the town board may set a rate by resolution. So what's being recommended here isn't off base there. You may find something else you need to put in there with the new rate, or you may not. So that's something we could discuss moving on. But that's it for now. Were there any questions? Anything?
I have a question. So the grants, getting the grants, is that part of your job, or is that part of our job, or whose job is that?
Both.
Okay.
We do help with that. That's not something I work directly with, but we have several people that are really in the know about the ins and outs of the paperwork that goes with the grant applications. And the state grants, currently there's the bipartisan infrastructure law. I think this is the last year of that. That's basically federal funds that stuck into the state funds. Hopefully that goes on as normal this year. And those are things that have specific applications and specific requirements to receive that funding. Some of the revolving funds are available as well. You can get a lower than the 5% interest rate with the state drinking water state revolving fund. So the different pieces of funding have different requirements, but we do help with that. Needs your input, needs information from the town.
And this seems to be a good time to fund water infrastructure. It seems much easier to get that than wastewater, for instance.
I think some of that is because of some of the issues recently, the PFAS and the lead and copper, and the basic recognition that a lot of these systems are aging and they need help. And often, it's just really difficult for a small community to pay the costs.
Well, that was my question about the lead service line compliance. Is there any sort of a matrix or meshing of this project with that?
I don't know how the funding timing goes with that, but if you do know of or have identified lead service lines, it would be great to coordinate that, because you don't want to open your roads more than you have to. If it could be coordinated, you could be replacing those mains that are under the engineering plan, and replacing the service connections while that road is opened. And that would be ideal.
Ideal. Thank you.
So one of the concerns, you know, other than the fact that the infrastructure is so old, is, and it's come to my attention several times by several people, is because of the way our infrastructure is and the way the pipes are set up and the different sizes, that though our fire hydrants are operable, they do not actually meet code because they don't have the pressure that is needed. So, you know, that's a huge, I think, concern.
And there are different pressure zones, and I don't know if Kelsey's probably more involved with that than I am, but we have noted different pressure areas that where changing the way the piping configuration goes would say some of those are going to be blocked off or changed, so that, yeah, we want to take care of some of those pressure areas for the actual water distribution system, which will only help improve the situation with fire hydrants. Fire hydrants, the same thing. They age and need to be changed. So overall, fixing some of those other issues with pressure are going to help that.
The part of the scope of the work also includes putting in some new valves. A lot of the valves were stuck the last time we had a pipe break, and so the town was not able to shut down a section of the system. They had to shut down most of the system. So that's kind of really important for us too, is to fix that, which will
Maintain
be part
that
of this.
water use that you can while you're fixing something,
Yeah.
yes.
So in your focus in your map planning report, you're not going to do any focus on the fire hydrants and the pressure that they're outputting?
It's in the plan. Can you
Is
speak
it?
any more of that? They are in the engineering report.
Yeah, so we did look at the pressure in the fire hydrants. Most of them were fine. I only really identified one that didn't meet code. It's supposed to have a minimum of 20 psi, and I only found one that didn't meet that. And because of where it is, it's like, if I remember correctly, it's right near the water tank. The elevation is very high where it is, so what you would have to do is the resolution for that particular like small little section is very cost prohibitive. You could do that, but there's only so much money to go around, you know.
And so the pressure, the regulations for code and the regulations for insurance for pressure, are they the same?
I think it's the driving force is the insurance, because the situation on the engineering and the water system and the pipe size and the elevation and the topography and water flows downhill, it can be different for every system.
So we could have a pressure that meets code but doesn't meet insurance regulation?
And those are things that need to be engineered. If your system is issues being run by gravity alone, there are pumping requirements in certain situations where the water has to go uphill. So it'd be a specific section or property look at, but I do know that there are costs in this estimate for replacement of several hydrants and improving pressure by changing out those issues with the water main.
All right.
So that should help. And then if there's anything remaining after that, it would be something to look at what's actually driving that problem.
And the aging of the system isn't the only problem. Our system was a disaster from the installation. It was patched together with, I think, whatever material and dimension of pipe was on sale at the hardware store. So it hasn't really worked well from the beginning, and the fact that the pipe sizes keep changing in a non-logical way throughout the system is pretty
That'll affect your pressure.
impressively
Yeah.
bad, yeah. So some of this phase of work would take care of the worst of those.
improve the pressures in your whole system, you're going to improve the situation with your pressure in your fire hydrants. Beyond that, without more specific detail on a specific hydrant or a location, that's all we can say at the moment, but something to keep in mind.
Did you get a sense of whether there was leakage in the system?
No.
No, I didn't really look at that.
Okay.
If there is, it's due to old pipes and old pipe joints, so hopefully replacing those older sections and taking care of those issues will also prevent some of your leaks.
Okay, great.
Anyone else have questions?
All right, then thank you so much for doing this. And I feel much better about the water system knowing that it's being looked at in such detail. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good night.
Okay, so Dawn, I think you're next.
So this evening, I am presenting our abstracts for the month of February. For our prepaids and our monthly bills, for our general fund A, $222,020.30. Highway fund, $40,140.98. Amenia lighting, $1,211.72. Wasake lighting, $459.98. Amenia water, $31,499.22. Capital project highway garage, $39,482.08. Amenia fire, $1,214,489.09. Wasake fire, $437,700. Amenia library, $245,000, for a grand total of bills paid this month, $2,232,003.37. And at this time, I'm seeking authorization for the supervisor to pay claims as presented.
I make that motion?
Roseanne?
I'll second.
Supervisor?
Yes.
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 Also, just acknowledging receipt and circulation that's in our packets tonight. We have our building department report totaling $5,819. There's the water system operations report, water district totaling $17,316.01. Those are the reports in our packet.
Okay. Is there a report from the wastewater committee?
I'm just at a loss with Paul, so I'm sorry. I actually first met Paul on the wastewater committee like 3.5 years ago, and I don't think you could find somebody who loved Amenia more or who had more energy. And I actually agreed with him on a lot of things, and there were a lot of things I didn't, but probably more I did. It's awful. So anyway, the wastewater committee. Several years ago, when the wastewater committee really got working to develop the current preliminary engineering report we have, it became apparent to us that the majority of the people in that proposed district were also water customers. And that then led us to a better understanding of the issues with the water district. Now, with the water district having a preliminary engineering report and the map planning report that was just presented to you, the wastewater committee reviewed that, and understanding that it encompasses work that must be done that will impact users. The wastewater committee is putting on hold the progress on the formation of that district through petition. The committee has realigned to work to increase our IUP score. That's the intended use plan. It is that scoring that ultimately gets you grant funding. And so we are going to focus on getting the water body that runs through the Amenia hamlet on the testing regime with DEC, which is what's required to get that designated as an impaired water body, which that then impacts our IUP score. So that will be our focus for the next year. And yeah, that's what I have for that. Can I go on into the
Into the housing board.
Into the
It is
housing
right-
board,
It is the
yeah.
next one, yeah, sure.
So the housing board, I circulated an email earlier this week to the town board that Amenia has now been designated a pro-housing community. It was a Herlikin, that's a terrible word. Anyway, it was a huge effort to get this done. It required the building department, specifically Bridget, who spent an enormous amount of time going over the past 3 years of building permit data to enter them into this spreadsheet. And then she did a lot of the work with Judy and the planning and zoning department because all of that data also had to be put into this. So it opens up funding ability. The governor, I think it was 2 years ago, conditioned a number of different large grants on being a pro-housing community. So we're very happy with that. The Housing Board had also been pushing the county to apply for a straight program called the ADU plus one unit ADU program. It's a grant program whereby homeowners can apply to receive up to $125,000 to create an ADU in their home. The county, that wasn't a focus of theirs, but Hudson River Housing did apply, and we wrote a letter of support for that, and Hudson River Housing has been awarded a contract under this Plus One program. So they should be putting their program together. They will be the administrator. That's the way it works with the state. A nonprofit developer administers a pot of money. So in the next couple of months, the Housing Board will be reaching out to the community with more information about how you can apply. The last thing is that we are having a Workforce Housing 101 community event on Saturday here at Town Hall, upstairs in the rec room. Paul was kind enough to let us use that room. It will be, there are 4 different speakers. The Housing Board will speak about what workforce housing is. The county, Dutchess County Planning and Development will come and talk about what they are doing in the county around affordable housing and workforce housing. Kent Affordable Housing, their president will come and speak about the affordable housing community there and how how it came about and the benefit that it is to the community. And then Hudson River Housing will finish up with how you apply generally for workforce housing. So, and then there will be a panel discussion afterwards. So that's here, Town Hall, Saturday, 10 to 12. And I don't think anybody mentioned this, but there is a memorial for Paul on Saturday from 1 to, I believe, 5 at the Passaic Firehouse. So bring your party shoes. I'm sure that's what he would want. Thank you.
Charlie had a question, not really a question, but for a lot of people that were listening, on Channel 22, et cetera, I mean, they probably don't know what an ADU is or what it means to be designated for housing.
Okay, that's a really good question, so I'm sorry. So ADU is accessory dwelling unit. You can think of it as it is an apartment over a garage. It can be an attached residential unit, an apartment. So an accessory dwelling unit. And Amenia allows accessory dwelling units in every use zone for single and 2-family homes. So if you have a single or a 2-family home, you can build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, in or adjoining or as a separate structure on your property. And then
Do you know how much the grant was for yet? or-
it is up to $125,000. So it is.
Right, but you said
I think that
I'm just curious how
Hudson
many
River
people
Housing,
could
like the
take-
total pool,
Yeah,
I feel like it's $1 million that they were given.
Okay.
So,
so a
you
lot
know,
of people could take advantage of it.
yes.
Yeah.
Now, we are not the only community that wrote a letter that is in their pool.
Getting a piece of that
I
pie.
think it's like 5. But what we want to do is get our community members who are interested in this to jump on top of it. It is for a homeowner. There are income limits, so it's like, the common one family is, I'm going to throw it off the top of my head, but I know if a 4-family, I believe it's $119,000 is the max that you could earn for your family and apply to this program. That's still a lot of money, and I think a lot of people would be, let's call it an apartment. The apartment that's created through this has to be affordable to the person that you rent it to for a compliance period. So Again, I can't remember the time frame. I want to say maybe it's 10 years. This program allows you to rent to your family. So you could have an adult child that you rent to, that you've created an apartment so they're no longer in your house.
Or out of the basement at
Yeah,
least.
exactly. Did that answer
Yep.
your question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Most of it, anyway.
And just for the recreation, I just wanted to announce that I believe it's our last night of skating on Monday, 2/24 at Silo Ridge from 3:30 to 6, and you can register by email or on the website. Yeah. And that was it for rec.
Anyone else? I don't think so.
Economic development.
Oh, economic development, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Economic Development Committee. It's the first time we're making a report here. We've had 2 meetings. Our first meeting was spent trying to determine what our purview is. What can we do? What should we do? How do we do it? What could benefit Amenia today, tomorrow, and in the future? For new residents, for the residents already here, for all the various constituencies, income levels, and whatnot. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We also talked about what is it that we can offer entities coming into the community. What does the community need? And a lot of that comes down to who are we as a community? In a simple word today, branding. What is our brand? I looked at some of those logos outside, and I couldn't tell what any of them said. And I think we've come up to, and I'm not pitching this as a logo, but picture in your mind the Oblong Valley, which we did some research on and learned a lot about. The gateway to the Berkshires, coming up from the city. Put a bike trail kind of going through that. Put fields in the distance like you're coming down Depot Hill. Put the Wassaic Art Project. Put something that says we live here with the foundation here, and this is our journey into the future. That tells me who we are. That tells our committee who we are, but we don't have that. So it's a little hard for us to go out and pitch the economic opportunities here, because we don't know the most important thing. Is that what Amenia wants? We could turn this into an Airbnb community and make plenty of resort opportunities, but none of us want that. So, as I mentioned in the last meeting, we need to have a little bit of a little clearer view as to who we are. And to that end, we are going to be meeting with the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee and talking to them about how do we determine, how do we involve all stakeholders in Amenia into determining who we are and who we want to be. There are, however, a few projects we are looking on, and we discussed this more in our second meeting, to help grow the community or create that foundation for economic development. Economic development is pretty broad. It includes employment. It includes gaining more revenue. It includes all the vast components that go along with that, tourism or manufacturing, whatever. So the 3 projects we thought were important and that would help us kind of address each one of those little components. The first one you're already working on, and we're not doing anything independently without clearing it with committees and without consulting with you. But I'll give you a very quick preview. First one we're looking at is parking, which has been mentioned several times. We've spoken to people and found out some of the difficulties here, and we're talking about various solutions amongst ourselves. The second one we decided is something that's crucial for safety and also convenience of life and also for economic drive, and that's an additional cell tower somewhere. Communication here is horrible. You need an ambulance. Good luck. You're a business. You need to call someone to your business because there's an accident. Good luck in some places. One of our members of the committee is an attorney that deals with cellular companies as his specialty on the very high end of corporate responsibilities. And he's having off-the-record conversations with the current cell phone carriers and looking at what the hindrances are and what would encourage a cell phone company to put another tower here. Again, we'll consult with you because we know there are so many issues regarding codes and whatnot. There was an article recently in the Millerton News which was, Can You Hear Me Now? About the need for cell towers. I suggest everyone take a look at our paper of record. There was a quick plug. The last thing we're looking at has been discussed here is a farmer's market, but we're looking at doing it a little differently. I looked at the sales today of Great Barrington's Food Co-op, and I looked at their structure. They do pretty well. They also have markets in other places. We also looked at what Adams Farms does. And we realized that here in Amenia, we have Litchfield County, which doesn't really have a place. A lot of people go up to Guido's or the Food Co-op in Great Barrington. I looked at the people here who don't go to LeBon's and don't go to Sharon Market or don't go to Freshtown, and they go up to Great Barrington or they go down to Brewster or Harrington. And what we're pitching, or what we plan on pitching to a couple of these markets is a concept that I first saw in New Orleans where Whole Foods put a little smaller satellite market. Our concept would be to pitch them using local produce, kind of a half local farmers market, kind of a co-op, and also a profit-making entity for whichever market comes in. It's something that I've heard has been tried in other communities across the country. It's something that, based on revenues that we've looked at, could drive revenues, and it's certainly something that will attract a lot of visitors to this market. And that's sort of where we're at right now. I mean, it's all very premature. We do have some meetings coming up with some of these grocers, and we'll report back.
Interesting, thank you. Okay, so discussion items, which I'll try to get through quickly. The cannabis local law, we are waiting to find out if that's going to be on the ballot in November, if there's a petition completed, and so that may give us a little bit of breathing room in terms of the local law. But I think that we've received comments now from Dutchess County Planning, from our planning board, and somewhere else.
There was a third one too, I think.
Anyway, so we've received those comments, and we haven't discussed them in detail. I could write something up for the next meeting if you'd like, just sort of listing what their concerns were, and then send it out to you before the meeting so we can discuss it next time. I don't know that anyone's ready to go through the individual issues at this point.
I'm wondering, I went through them, and quite honestly, some of the ones, I wasn't really quite clear on exactly what they meant. So I'm wondering if it might be useful to have somebody from the planning board come in and explain their comments and show us actually,
That's a
since
good
they're
idea.
the ones who wrote them.
Okay. The next one is plan for parking along Main Street. Probably the majority of the complaints I get are from people who can't find a spot on Main Street. I have never had that problem, but I'm sure there are people who do, and I certainly know that there are people who are elderly who can't get to the post office very easily, and because we have, people are required to use post office boxes in the center of town, there's a lot of traffic there. So I've been talking to Rosanna, and talking to Dawn actually too, about ways to, and also talking to the building department about ways to improve the parking along Main Street. And we came up with 3 things, which I think if they're all done, might actually impact that. The first is a letter to business owners on Main Street to make them aware that we have a problem and to see whether the business owners themselves cannot park on Main Street, because apparently a lot of the complaints are that there are people who are parked there all day. The second is to change the signage there, to either establish a handicap parking spot right in front of the post office, or to reduce the parking time there to 15 minutes or half an hour, so that people are not staying longer than need be, so everyone can kind of access that. And the third was about enforcement, and Rosanna's been researching that, so.
So actually, the information I received, Jamie Vidiello was the one who initially went through and made these contacts, and he passed the contacts on to me, and it's based on what Pauling did. Pauling had a very big problem with parking as well. And so I spoke to Louis, and I can't remember his last name, very nice man, and he is the civilian patrol officer down in Pauling. That is a position that is actually on the civil service list. He uses two handheld devices, one that scans registrations and determines time and how long that they've been there. So, you know, you do it and you go back through and if they're over the limit, and then a handheld printer, which then prints the ticket, which you can then put under the windshield. All of this goes through, and it's in your packet, the description of the person that they hired. Basically, there are no really minimum qualifications. It just tells you what kind of knowledge and skills and abilities that they kind of need to learn. But other than that, and then the other item in the packet is where it comes from. You know, where the machines come from, the prices, the costs, the proposals. So I think we should seriously take a look at that. It sounds like, and it's not just Main Street. You know, after talking to Megan, there are other streets in town that also have parking issues. So I think it's really something that we could look into. Now, according to the village clerk in Pauling, basically the cost of all this is kind of eliminated by the fees that you're collecting, you know, for the tickets. So it's kind of a wash, so it shouldn't be, although they charge much higher for their parking tickets. But, you know, it shouldn't be a huge cost at the end of the day for the town. And hopefully, and according to Pauling, it eliminated their problem in like 3 or 4 months. I mean, it really was huge and made it really impactful. Of course, there's also the other piece of the puzzle that we have to look at is then we also need to create more parking. So that's something that we have to take a look at as well, because those people have to park someplace.
Right.
So,
So my experience, you ever go to Millerton Village and try to find a parking place on a weekend, for example? Good luck. I don't even drive up Main Street anymore. A lot of years ago, there was the Millerton Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of the business owners, for all of them, were involved. And this was about the same time the rail trail was just starting to become the rail trail. They were just working on the project at the very beginning. So they all said the same thing, you know, what do we do? Our customers can't park here, you know, blah, blah, blah. So they all agreed, not all of them, but people agreed that, well, we're not going to park in front of our own businesses. Needless to say, they parked in front of their own businesses. So, I mean, it was, and I'm still kind of laughing about that. But one of the things that we have is where our post office is located, unless it moves, is near a very busy intersection. There's not a lot of space to park, you know. There's a lot of activity going on. It really isn't that safe, especially if you're handicapped. So signage would obviously be something that I think would make a lot of sense, but it's no good if there's no enforcement, you know. So, and we at present time don't have either. So.
And we would need to do both, right?
We
would
need to do both.
enforce
So-
Yeah.
signage and then say, hey, you've been past the limit.
So if you're going to take on a project like this, we definitely need signage and enforcement. So,
Yeah, and DOT, who's sometimes, New York State DOT, who can be quite intractable in terms of getting information out of them, let alone help. I think I finally found the person who addresses those things, so I tried him today, I'll call again tomorrow, and hopefully we can find out what we have to do to change
To
parking
what the
signs.
next step
for
is,
instance.
right, okay.
The next thing I had on the list is, I went to Millerton because they had a presentation about renovations or improvements to what they call Century Boulevard, which I actually didn't know what that was. And it's the street that's above Main Street, behind the church. And I was told that that street used to be called Parking Street because apparently that was put there in an effort to address the lack of parking in Millerton. And there was a presentation by our Ty and Bond, which was our engineer initially for the wastewater system, and they were basically getting input from people in terms of what they thought the issues were there and what was needed. And I thought, wow, it'd be really great if we could do that in Amenia. And then I thought, wait a minute, I think someone did that like when I first moved here. And I went through some drawers in my office and found a proposal by Mark Morrison, who's a pretty well-known landscape architect who lives in Passaic. And in 2004, he had done a schematic design for improvements along Main Street that included additional sidewalks, parking that was a little clarified in terms of, how many spaces there actually are, and, a variety of improvements in terms of lighting and lighting, planting, and there was another piece too. I guess there were some improvements to the sidewalk. So I distributed that to the board just before we came here, so no one's had a chance to look at it. But that's something that I'd like to also show to Economic Development and the Comprehensive Plan Committee and find out, all of those things 20 years later still seem like things that are a good idea and that we need. So I'd like to, sort of present to those two committees and see what they have to say about it, and hopefully.
I did
next
look
time
at
we'll
it.
talk- You did look at it?
I loved the planters with the lanterns with the planters on them. I thought that was beautiful. Just like, and from where they did it from, it looked really pretty, and it was something so simple that just really like brightened up that whole street.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that would transform Main Street that isn't even hugely expensive, but I also think there are Main Street grants that, that are available for stuff like that. So anyway, I just thought we should look at that because I think a lot of the things that, that actually got mentioned in the Economic Development Report, I think that that's
still
something that could
relevant.
parallel that, and we should just sort of find out if it does. And the last thing is the website. I think there were I'm trying to think what exactly was sent to the board. A list of all the components, all the links that are within the site. And then, Charlie, I don't actually remember what the other piece was that I received on the website.
Yeah, so the sitemap, which lists all of the different pages in the website.
Of which there are many.
Yeah, and then we sent out examples of the various different modules that'll be included. So I think what we were looking for feedback from the board, if there was any section that they felt was missing in that. We can add stuff, the platform will allow us to add pages, but if there's something that seems amiss there. We had met with all of the town hall staff, which I thought was very productive, and it seemed we got a lot of really good
I was gonna say,
feedback
did
from
you get any feedback from them? Because I didn't hear their feedback.
Yeah, I think that the vast majority of the feedback was, so the building department wanted to see if there was a way we could incorporate a place for users to search for open building permits. So we're checking with BAS, which is who we license that software from, to see if that's a possibility. Trying to think of what other.
We also talked about standardizing forms.
Yes.
Because, first of all, the voucher forms, for instance, are too small well, I certainly can't fit a signature in the lines they leave, but that's like the least of our problems. There's a lot of, there are a lot of documents that haven't been looked at in a really long time, and I don't think are particularly clear to use. Feel that way about the building department forms because, you know, I was an architect and some of the questions are just so esoteric, so.
So
yes.
yeah, we walked away from that meeting and the supervisor asked all the departments to, if they don't have a soft copy, a Word version of their form, to retype their form, and then we will standardize it across. I've also reached out to the vendor that the board chose for the website, has a subsidiary, it's a sister company that does online forms and stuff. It's a licensing fee, so I had a call with them earlier this week to see if that makes sense. Paul had mentioned about looking at possibly alternatives to the MyRec, which is a licensing software that we use. Almost everybody does. It's really dated, and so there's a question about if there's a possibility that there could be an alternative to that. There weren't a ton of comments related to like the sitemap. Everybody felt good about that. There were questions around how minutes, resolutions, agendas, packets will be presented on the new site, and we sent around a link to an example of how that is, so that every board committee will be able to, we can either decide, the town board or the supervisor's office can decide if they want to give rights to people to be able to upload those for themselves in their category, which would be their board or whatnot. But the new system will allow the secretary or the supervisor to upload the agenda so that everybody will be able to see the agenda, the packet, any ancillary documents, and then they'll be able to search for those if they'd like. There were questions about the content in the current site and how that would come over. The website vendor will pull all of our current content on our site over, and they will pull in the last 3 years of all minutes, agendas, and packets to put into the system as well.
And economic development might also be interested that one of the features of the site as sketched out is not quite a business directory, but a page that called Explore that would like let people look to see what places there are to stay in Amenia and what the restaurants are and activities and all that stuff. So I think that would be kind of helpful too.
Emergency notices, so people did ask about that, and there is a subscribe feature on the homepage as well as a section in the site that follows you everywhere where you can subscribe to notices. Both emergency notices is default, like you cannot opt out of emergency notice subscriptions, but you can subscribe to notifications for any of the boards or committees whenever they post something, that you would get an email alert.
If you are going to...
Do you want to?
Oh no, Judy,
Do you want to talk to
you're
me
gonna have to
offline,
go to the
Judy?
podium. Just for the people at home.
If you are asking about how things are going to be done, he's not listening.
I'm sorry, what?
If you're going to be having discussions about what's happening to Recreation Commission website things, please copy the Recreation Commission on it too, okay? Because I didn't know there was anything being spoken about there, none of us did. So that would be, we might be interested in incorporating into the website at some point, so just copy us too, okay? Thanks.
Basically the recreation site will all be transferred from the existing site. Charlie.
So, yeah, and I apologize, I'm sort of speaking out of school. Paul had just mentioned to me about looking at the MyRec and the cost of it and how frequently it was used, and I said, well, you know, but we're not touching any of that. Like that's, so I apologize. I do want to make a call out. We have reached out to a lot of businesses, real estate brokers, and maybe if Brad, if you have photos, we're looking for high-res photography of the town. It can be historic photographs, recent photographs, because there will be a gallery portion of it, as well as photography will be featured throughout the site. And we've gotten a lot of really great stuff, but like the more, the merrier. But it does need to be high res, so, yeah, thank you.
I had one more point, question, or, well, on our current website, and I was really kind of shocked to figure this out. We don't have a website policy for what's posted on the site. Not like, most organizations do, like our libraries, the Mid-Hudson Library System, et cetera. So I've been working on one, and I came up with a template, and I just started the process of meeting with different parts of the town to help craft it. So, but once
Which parts are those?
well, I had just met with the ethics committee on it already and discussed it with them. So now I have to start looking at the handbook and start incorporating certain parts of the handbook as it relates to employees and onward, whatever comes in, and then I'll bounce it off of Ian at some point for legalese, and then we'll send something to the board.
Excellent. I think that we have made it to the resolution stage, and there's just one.
34.
Ian? What?
34.
Oh, I thought you said that meant there were 34 resolutions, in which case I was leaving the room.
You definitely need more water then.
Okay, let's see. Resolution number 34, and it's a very short one. Authorizing an application to the Community Development Block Grant Program for fiscal year 2025. We discussed this at last week's meeting. Whereas the town of Amenia is a participant in the Dutchess County Urban Consortium for the Community Development Block Grant Program for fiscal year 2025, and whereas the town board held a public hearing on February 6, 2025, to obtain input pertaining to a possible community development block grant program application, which requests a maximum amount of $200,000 for water district infrastructure improvements. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. One, the recitations set forth above are incorporated in this resolution as if fully set forth and adopted herein. And be it further, the town board hereby approves an application to the Community Development Block Grant for a maximum amount of $200,000 for water district infrastructure improvements. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Supervisor Blackman?
Yes?
Councilmembers?
Yes.
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 Okay. Are there any other matters?
You know, I should have brought this up when we were talking about the parking, and Brad mentioned that it's in a very busy intersection with the post office. Who decided where those crosswalks are going? It seems like they're in the widest part of the road.
No, I totally agree with you, yes.
And they're really close to the
New York
intersection.
State DOT.
Okay, is there any way that we could ask them if perhaps?
If I could actually get a contact at DOT, I would like to do that because they are, the way they're laid out is the longest possible distance to cross those streets. And it also is angled in a way that I don't think cars can see you very clearly if you're crossing at the crosswalk. And they did change the timing, so now a pedestrian gets a little bit of a head start when they step out into traffic.
About into the middle.
What?
They get to about the
It
middle.
gets you about to the middle, but at least you get to the middle. But no, it's really bad, and I would like to talk to someone about DOT. That's why I think it's worth looking at the streetscape thing, because there are there are a lot of problems crossing downtown, and if we can't get pedestrians to feel safe crossing Main Street, we're in a lot of trouble in terms of economic development.
I just had one thing. Vicki Doyle at the CAC meeting last night had asked if I would be the liaison to the comp plan in the meantime, because
Great.
their next meeting is March 11th. So I just wanted to make sure, I told her, I said, I don't mind filling in indefinitely, or if we appoint somebody and we want to then appoint
Sure.
that as liaison.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
she's,
just glad I don't have to do it. Thank you.
well, I figured I'd bring up, do we need the wastewater covered?
Right. And the other one was housing, wasn't it?
I'm housing already.
Oh, you're on
But
housing.
he was
So what was the other name?
ZBA.
Paul was,
ZBA and the wastewater, right?
ZBA, comp plan, wastewater.
okay,
Yeah.
so the zoning.
I don't mind taking on wastewater too, but it's up to
Okay.
you guys.
Well, let's see
I-
if we can
If
distribute.
you want to take
little
ethics, I could do ZBA.
Yeah, sure. That works.
Oh, that might work out, yeah.
All right, cool. That's great.
Is that all right?
So
Yeah.
Brad's gonna do ethics?
Yeah.
Brad,
and Rosanna's gonna take the ZBA.
You're gonna get really sick of this room, Rosie.
And I'm gonna take
You're gonna get
Comp
really
plan.
sick of this
comp
room.
plan and wastewater.
And wastewater?
Yes. Okay,
And is
Charlie?
Thank you all.
Is there a motion
I'll make that motion.
for the liaisons reappointments?
He makes a motion, I'll second it.
Do I have to actually like spell it all out and like?
I got it
Oh,
written.
you got it written down? I
I'll
hope.
second, yes.
Supervisor,
Yes,
council members?
Yes.
Yes.
that's great. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
stepping forward, all of you. Okay, well then I would move that we adjourn.
I will second.
Alright, Leo. Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Want your paperclip back?
Oh, jeez. Is that your fidget?
It was tonight.
Okay, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, actually, I requested it in the beginning and I didn't get it. So it's kind of.